All right, joining me now for our Tuesday dose of common sense. And today, I tell you what, there's some interesting headlines that are in desperate need of some common sense. Is host of Outsiders and editor at The Spectator magazine, Rowan Dean. Great to be with you in Sydney tonight, Rowan.
Great to be here with you. Great editorial. I think you really, got to a lot of critical points there. And this Indigenous voice, there is so much to talk about. But you're right that there is a conspiracy afoot here. I mean, I would point to the fact that your previous boss, Tony Abbott, was the envoy to Indigenous Australia. Suddenly, poof, pulled suddenly after the election, or was it just before? I think it was just after the election. Suddenly we've got this all in front of us. And if you see all the usual suspects rushing out to reassure us, oh, it's okay, there's not a problem here. You had Anne Toomey from the constitutional expert, great, talented, intelligent woman, but she's reassuring us, no, there's not a problem. This will be no different to the Human Rights Commission. Well, heaven help us.
And we've heard all of that before. I mean, I have to say, I do not think that they would be going down this path if Tony Abbott was still in the Parliament.
Of course they wouldn't.
That's
why they pulled the plug on him.
That's the first point. Now, to say that we will not put this into the Constitution, this idea of an Indigenous voice, because we don't think it would pass, that's the government admitting that Australians don't support it. Now, if they don't support it enough to vote for it in the Constitution, what right does anyone in the Parliament have to put it up via legislation anyway? And when I wrote about this in early June, after this draft legislation was leaked, Rowan, I wrote about it, and I had a number of phone calls with senior government MPs and ministers who said, this is not going anywhere, this is a frolic of Ken Wyatt's. Well, fast forward 6 weeks, we have this big speech, and now what's more troubling, I think, we have calls and action for a treaty with the governments of Queensland and Victoria.
Yeah, the fix is in. So what you've got is a concerted campaign. Everyone assumed, apart from myself, that
correct. Yes.
Labor were going to win the election, so they had this all ready to go. They had it all planned out, ready to go. We did same-sex marriage. Now let's get Indigenous Australia, the voice from the heart, through. And they've suddenly gone, oh, okay, we'll still try and do the same thing. And what they've tried to do, so they've corralled businesses. You've got business corporate leaders out there saying, yes, we're all behind this. Now the states are rushing in to do their little bit of legislation, like Queensland. There's a government minister doing his bit. But you mentioned the quiet Australian. The Australian taxpayer has to ask themselves, what is the key? What is really behind this? Terrific letter by Michael Mansell, Indigenous activist going back many decades. At least he told the truth. Terrific letter in The Australian where he basically said, a voice is irrelevant, a voice doesn't have any power, forget all that. It's the treaty we want.
Correct.
The treaty has power behind it. What's the two things? The two single things are land and money. This is entirely about land and money dressed up as all sorts of other touchy-feely things, but that's what it comes down to. The hardcore Indigenous activists...
It's rubbish, because in New Zealand, where there is the Treaty of Waitangi, it occurred in the 1800s at the time the British arrived. We're talking now about basically a retrospective treaty going back 2 centuries with black fellas who are no longer here, with white fellas who are no longer here, about a whole lot of terms which no longer exist, and about a treatment of one Australian by another Australian that is no longer manifest. In fact, I would say in my lifetime, in your lifetime, we have come such a long way. Why create another war with ourselves?
Well, you're right to use the word war, because a treaty is two warring parties coming together and working out how to prevent the hatred and to create a peaceful divvying up of the spoils of the war. We're not at war with Indigenous Australia. Indigenous Australia is not at war with non-Indigenous Australia. This is a complete fabrication whereby you are saying, as you say, retrospective treaty means I am responsible. I mean, I'm 5th generation or whatever Australian, so suddenly I'm responsible for whatever my great-great-great-great-granddad did or grandmother or did or didn't do, and Indigenous Australians, they're responsible for whatever grievances they may have, and we're going to settle all this 2 centuries later, and we're going to make the individuals responsible. And when I say make them responsible, it is about responsibility. Reparations, that means money. Native title, that means land. That's all this is about. Forget the rest of it, smoking ceremonies or whatever. This is all about introducing a legal framework where we're already seeing it in Victoria with the Grampians, where a non-elected group can say, based on their race and their ancestry. Sorry, this land is now off limits to you. You can't go there. We're seeing it up at Uluru, same thing, sorry. And this is all just testing how the law can be made flexible for land grabs and then for money.
Yeah, I think I'm going to move to other issues. I think it's so sad because I think, as I said, we have come so far in my lifetime. In a way, I think we can all feel very positive of our country and where we're headed. I think this is a very dangerous...
It's retrospect and very dangerous.
And divisive.